Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of teissTalk with me, your host, Jenny Radcliffe. We've got a great show for you today. Today, we are talking all about measuring the impact of the ROI from our SOC. So lots of TLAs coming up on today's show. We're also going to talk a little bit about reporting the progress of that impact to the board in these turbulent times. We're going to touch a little bit on burnout and what's affecting all of our employees in those security operations centres, because we are under attack constantly. And we've got a report here, an article all about why that might be and how we're coping, if we're coping. I'd like to welcome all of you to the show. We know that we are I think the only talk show that's twice a week with a full live audience, and it's lovely to see everybody. I'd like to invite all of our audience to ask questions and join us in the chat, which you will see on the right hand side of your screen. Best questions, comments, or engagement have a chance of winning our fabulous teissTalk mug, which are incredibly sought after, as you know. Now, later to join me to discuss that article all about burnout for our SOC teams are two people. We have got Manesh Datani, who's the Cybersecurity Operations Manager at Simply Business, and we've got Samantha Humphreys and Sam's Head of Security Strategy at Exabeam, who are sponsoring the show today. So thank you to Exabeam. But first, I'm joined by a lady with an illustrious position and career in cybersecurity. I'd like to welcome Joyce Rodriguez, who's the Global Head of Threat and Vulnerability Management Prevention at Shell. Welcome to the show, Joyce. Hi, Joyce. How are you?
Thanks, Jenny. And I'm glad to be here.
I just want to say I'm very impressed.
I'm doing well, Jenny. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. You got a slight delay. Joyce is joining us from her home country of India today. So we just have that little slight delay. So bear with me. Joyce, I'm very impressed that your lipstick matches your background. I didn't realise that we were coordinating with
that is just a coincidence.
Well, listen, welcome to the show, Joyce. I mean, first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what your title is at Shell, what it is you do at Shell, and a little bit about what's keeping you busy at the moment?
Sure. In my current role, I am the head of cyber threat prevention. And in this role, I lead all the prevention capabilities that include threat intel analysis, threat hunting, red teaming, vulnerability management, that's identifying through either scanning or penetration testing, prioritizing, assessing them, prioritizing, and getting them remediated through various teams in the organization. I do also manage the security and content engineering teams that manage all the cyber defense tools and platforms that we use for SIEMs or kind of capabilities, advanced analytics capabilities as well. And I'm right now also setting up a new team that'll provide technical advisory on security policy enforcements and mitigation. So yeah, that's a summary of what I do. And I've been with my current organization in Shell for about for a little over 5 years. And prior to this, I've done a number of jobs in IT across infrastructure and application management in different roles, delivering operations or strategy, process improvements, and technology transformations.
Yeah, because that was the next
what
question.
keeps me busy.
Oh, sorry, go on. No.
No, so you also asked me what keeps me busy, right, in this role. So yes, in my current role, we're obviously constantly dealing with the evolving threat landscape, and we know that keeps changing. Then our organization's digital agenda is also expanding our attack surfaces, and yes, the evolving skills and sophistication of threat actors, their attack techniques, attacks on our brand, how we're constantly monitoring these, looking at where there is a direct impact or indirect impact to our organization, working on building certain prevention capabilities. So yes, all the things around us are definitely keeping us busy.
So we've got a few comments already coming in from our audience, Joyce, and I knew that we would because actually Scott has just said what I was about to say to you, which was, that's a hell of a list of responsibilities you've got there. Do you wish you could clone yourself?
Yes.
And make 3 of you?
But
okay, so I think that Joyce's connection is just that little bit clunky today, folks. If you can hear us, Joyce, please do carry on. We'll soldier on.
Well, it's a shame, actually. It was working pretty well in the dry run yesterday. But then I was saying, I don't know about the cloning part, but I'm ably supported by a smart and capable team of individuals, actually, or experts in various domains.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you a little bit about, there's one question I wanted to ask you, really, which was about the colonial pipeline. Because I know you obviously you're limited a little bit in what you can say, but it really brought home to everyone CNI and the idea of that being hacked or that being stopped, and it's sort of on everyone's mind. I mean, you live with that all the time. What are your sort of comments initially, just on attacks like that on infrastructure?
Well, attacks on critical infrastructure, right, whether it's colonial pipeline or anything else in the past, isn't a new thing. We always aware that critical infrastructure is a target of attacks because it's probably a vector to disrupt businesses, and the more disruption you can cause, the more you can benefit out of the agenda, whether that is whether the agenda is purely monetary or espionage, whatever it is, depending on the group's targeting. Uh, but some of the recent attacks have definitely gained some attention, right? And we were seeing interventions there, like, for example, the colonial one picked up the attention of the US government. And prior to that, though not on the CNI, but then the solar winds again picked up the attention of the US government as well. And, following some of these recent events, we've seen nations actually coming forward to take a stronger stance on these kind of cyber attacks, and also advising organizations on how they should be going about protecting the critical infrastructure that's important for the nation's uh, critical operations as well. So being carried out definitely seem to be more evolved. But then we should continue our efforts to continue to protect our systems. But it's not only about the CNI, the critical infrastructure. I think we should also think about the IT systems. We also have several technology systems that don't necessarily fall as an operational technology and OT kind of systems. We should also identify those IT systems critical to our business operations, any system that enables your movement of goods from point A to point B, and do everything you can to protect those systems, improve the security posture of those systems.
Well, Joyce, look, because we're just having a little bit of problems with the connectivity, what we're going to do is thank you for those comments now. I'm going to bring in the panel. What we're going to try and do is get you back in. So we're going to redial you back in and see if we can get a better connection. But obviously, huge responsibilities, massive job, and an inspiration really getting there from not a cyber background. Joyce has done many jobs on her way there. So we're going to thank you for now. Let's go to our news item, and we're going to see if the teissTalks can get Joyce back on track, just a little bit of a better connection. Can we just say to everyone, just bear with us a little bit, because that connection from India, can be a little bit clunky in these troubled times. So let's go now and introduce our other 2 guests today. I'm delighted to welcome to the show Sam Humphreys from Exavine. Sam is the head of security strategy for EMEA at Exavine, and our friend Minesh. Hi, Minesh, who has been asking questions and commenting on the show for a while, and is perfect for our topic and our discussion today, because Minesh Datani, you are the cybersecurity operations manager for Simply Business. Can I ask you both, first of all, just to give us a little bit of an introduction to what your role is and what the companies that you are at do? Maybe we can start with yourself, Sam.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jenny, and it's lovely to be here with you. I'm Manesh. It's very cool. So my background in security is long and varied, and I'm old. Is the short version. And I probably look older than I am because I've done 21 years in this wonderful industry. No. It's all smoke and mirrors. So yeah, I've done all sorts. The biggest chunk of my career was incident response. So running an operations team who would deal with virus outbreaks in the olden times, and then like beyond that, kind of some of the even mega breaches that went on. So mega breach, and then building products to try and solve some of those problems. And now I talk a lot. Really, is a big part of what I do and help people understand some of their challenges. And I try not to sit in the vendor ivory tower and being like, well, if you just do these 5 things, it's dead easy. You know, buy some software, ta-da, problem solved. Because that's not real. But I'm a big believer in what we do at Exabeam. Real short, like check out our website is the real short version. But we're analytics, XDR, SOAR, all that good gubbins. But
and big supporters of the community, Exabeam, not just Teiss.
We are.
Yeah. Well, look, welcome to the show, Sam. I know you're going to have a lot to say on both our article and this whole idea of burnt out SOC team members and what we can do to stop it. And Manesh, I mean, brilliant guest for today's show, I think, talking all about that team in the SOC and a little bit about burnout and reporting in. But do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do, what your role involves, and a little bit about Simply Business as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Really happy
it's our
to be
pleasure.
Here. So my background was mainly actually infrastructure and application support over the years. And actually similar to Sam, doing incident response for application support, really. So there was a lot of transferable skills into security. And a few years ago, the position opened up at Simply Business, and essentially the task was to build up the SOC. And 3 years down the line, we've got a completely internal centralized SOC. We don't use an MSSP. And it's been a really great journey. We've learned lots along the way. We're sort of responsible for incident response, threat and vulnerability management, consuming the various intel that we see and what's going on out there, and sort of taking action within our business. So yeah, so I've been doing this for a few years now. So yeah, going pretty good.
Well, listen, welcome to the panel and welcome to the show to both of you. I am getting some messages from the Owls saying that we think that we might get Joyce back. So we're going to try. And we're getting our wonderful comments from our terrific audience with the professor, with the prof saying, take the big beans out of the can, thyself. So she, honestly, we aren't communicating with 2 cans and a piece of string, prof, but thanks very much for the good-natured sarcasm. We're trying to get Joyce back online, folks, so thank you very much for your patience. Let's look at this article, shall we? So this is an article that entice to be like that, simultaneously trying to get Joyce back on and get the article up. This is an article that came up in Security Magazine. And it was based on a report from Trend Micro, a recent report where they polled sort of 2,300 IT security and security operations center decision makers across lots of different sizes of companies. And what they were really asking was how are they coping in the current environment? So if you're in a security operations center in this environment that we're in, how are you coping? And perhaps not surprisingly, 70% of respondents said they were completely overwhelmed by the threat volume. Now, coming to Sam Humphrey's face, is that a surprise?
Frankly, no. Which is, I hate that I have to say that, but I mean, it was bad enough before we all, had to go home, basically. But it's just got tougher and tougher and tougher.
Welcome back, Joyce. Welcome back, Joyce. Sorry, Sam, to interrupt. Welcome back. Yeah, go on. So before we, and then I guess working from home environment kind of up the ante a little bit.
Yeah, Chris Quebecer gave a great description. She said it's not BYOD anymore, it's BYOH, and it's so true. So, you're defending people's homes now, as well as all the other things, the distractions. It's been really tough. It's tough enough in security operations. And then, we've had a lot of stress, all of us have, in the last 15 months. So, I'm not surprised by the survey results. It's a big concern because the people side of this is super important. We need our people to be on form and at the top of their game, because you know it's a tough job. So yeah, I'm not surprised but saddened at the same time.
Well, you know, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, what they said, but just top level, Manesh, I mean, I'm sure this didn't surprise you either. I mean, the attacks are relentless at the moment. I even see it in our side of the business from the investigations and social engineering point of view. So it doesn't surprise me that anyone in this business is under immense strain right now.
Yeah, certainly, Jenny. I actually think, just like what you're saying, Sam, I think it's got worse since the pandemic started. You know, whereas some people might have less workload working remotely, but for us, it's been double, triple. It is relentless is the word. You know, checking in with the team, we've got feelings of anxiety. People are, you know, constantly, I find myself still wired at the end of the day and unable to switch off. So yeah, certainly, and trying to ensure that the team stay well engaged and happy in the day to day is the most important thing for me, and that has been a challenge all round.
I mean, Joyce, we're just, you know, it's so great to have you back, Joyce. And I mean, we're just discussing our article now. And I was just saying, you know, we're talking about 70% of SOC teams feeling very stressed, feel actually not stressed. Stress is not even strong enough. They say completely overwhelmed. I mean, a company like Shell has a lot of resources, but do you feel that it doesn't kind of matter how many you've got a lot to cover as well? Do you think that people are feeling more stressed than usual these days, since we had our work from home environment and hybrid and blended and whatever else we need to call this situation we find ourselves in?
Yeah, so the one harsh reality I've learned over my career is no matter how many resources you have, if you have an ambition, you always feel short of it, actually. So yes, I do agree that you know, the amount of work has increased, and even if we've managed to stabilize it or prioritize it, you know, there is an indirect impact. So at least, you know, a lot of the people in my team like to come into work, actually, because they get their ideas by talking to people over coffee, you know, chats. So yes, you know, while we do see largely the productivity not being impacted, but definitely the creativity, you know, the ideas coming in, you know, the collaboration, those kind of things have definitely, you know, been impacted, actually.
Yeah. I mean, Sam, from an instant response point of view, we've had a few guests on who said, actually, IR, working from home, was better. Just from a pure technical point of view, they could get people when they needed. It didn't, you know, people were kind of right where they needed them to be. Would you say, I was surprised at that, but would you agree with it?
Yeah, I think there's the people side of it, getting hold of people for sure. I think the harder thing, the responding bit can be really difficult. You know, if someone could, you know, if it's a smaller thing, someone's bringing you the laptop over and been like, hey, this thing's hosed. I've got ransomware. It's just, you know, it's a more localized attack. It's much easier to deal with, or they just walk over to you with it. And also, you know, even they think they've been phished. I know some of these smaller things, they generally come and find you. How you remediate a bunch of distributed machines, that's where things get super tough, I think. Even doing forensics, right? It really, I guess it depends on the incident. But I suppose from an IR perspective, sometimes, yeah, the contacting people, and if you're in the middle of something big and there isn't someone constantly tapping you on your shoulder saying, like, I need this, I need that, I need the other, you can focus a bit more. So I think that's a piece of it as well.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting, like, you know, some of the stats in this survey are quite alarming. I mean, like, obviously it's a stressful time in many ways. But I mean, there's quite a few. It says the majority, so 51% felt their team was overwhelmed by the volume of alerts. And that there was 27% of everybody's time was dealing with false positives. I mean, come to you again, Manesh. I thought probably we've got better detection tools, and maybe some of the awareness training, please, is kind of starting to take hold a little bit. Do you think that, I mean, this false positives, it can be very disheartening, take up a lot of time, can't it? I mean, you don't find it straight away necessarily.
Yeah, it is very frustrating. Now, if I was to, you know, think about what we're seeing, you know, say we're getting 1,000 tickets in a month into our security help desk, which includes, you know, alerts and events. At least 50% of those are just system alerts, and we're similarly seeing a lot of false positives amongst that. But each event still needs that amount of analyst and human time And yeah, it can get very, very frustrating for our analysts to come to that. Again, so I do totally understand, especially when people are now remote and there's different behaviors, and our agents are picking up different types of activity, which is not normal to when they're in the office. So we're having to work out, is this normal for when you're working fully remote? So there's all that thinking and that tuning and that communicating we have to keep on top of.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Joyce, we were learning on our feet, really, weren't we? And it's a good point to say that Manesh makes, that, you know, the attacks and the type of attacks started to change, didn't they, over the last 18 months? I mean, did you see that markedly? Did you have to flex your own capability to cope with the way the attacks were changing in that work from home environment?
Oh, yes, indeed. So we're constantly looking at the evolving TTPs and how we build improve detection capabilities and prevention where required as well. So we're constantly working on that. And yes, I do believe that there are new tactics being used, and we definitely have to study them and constantly change. I do also agree with the issue of false positives, actually, and we do have it. You can imagine, for the thousands of systems that we monitor, the amount of false positives that we can get, and from various sources, actually. So we do spend a considerable amount of time in eliminating false positives, also using technology, using more analytics in the background, more AI ML capabilities that can help eliminate false positives. So we constantly working on that, and I also have expertise developed in my team, for eliminating false positives, actually. So yes, but it's a challenge that I think every organization deals with, irrespective of which tools or platforms you use.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we've got some nice comments coming in on this. And yeah, I'm just going to spend a bit more time. We've got a bit of luxury of time here just on the article for once, because, we've got a question here from Paul saying, why do leaders use their teams as tools rather than people? They need to learn more emotional intelligence, especially when there's a disconnect with the work from home. I mean, I see Sam nodding there, is that kind of part of it? We've sort of thrown into this, weren't we? And that emotional intelligence element it's just more important than ever, I think. It seems to get more important every week when I speak to my experts about this.
It's hugely important. I think, if you're a leader, you've got to see, your people as humans. You can't just think of them as a job function. It's and even more so at the moment. We do a survey of a lot of people across the SOC every year. And one of the people's biggest reasons for leaving is because they don't have a defined career path. Because they're just being seen as being that function, and that's, they're doing the job, the metrics look great, everything's rosy, like tickety-boo. You've got to spend time with your people. I think the burnout has been a problem in this industry since this industry, and it's definitely, without question, got worse. I think good organizations are spending time investing in programs to be able to help that. But as a leader, you've really got to care about your people. Otherwise, I think, you're a bad leader, ultimately.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is true even when we see this as a technical function. I mean, we've got a few questions coming in. Let's look at this one from Laura. She says, what sorts of challenges have you faced with users' home networks? And also, have you done any education awareness training to improve home network security? What do we think about that one? Maybe go to Manesh next, and we're going to come to Joyce a little bit more subsequently, just to pick up a bit on that one-to-one that got interrupted. So Manesh, what did you think of that one?
Yeah, it's a great question from Laura. Certainly, the kind of things. Well, I'll focus on the education awareness here for a moment. Some of you may remember, for example, there was the defrag attacks that happened, that was widely reported. For example, when we saw that certain ISPs routers were vulnerable to that attack. So we released a knowledge article within our intranet to say, hey, this has happened. Make sure you update your home router and keep yourself
secure. Did they do it? Like,
secure.
Manesh, what was the response like on that? Did you manage to get them to do it?
Yeah, we certainly got a lot of emoji thumbs up reactions across the board on our messaging tool, because that's pretty much how we primarily sort of communicate. But I guess part of it is down to trusting the employee to do the right thing, given the instructions. We actually even went as far as to link in instructions to, this is how you do it for your BT router, this is how you do it for your Virgin router. So we tried to enable them as much as we can. And just general sort of challenges that we've faced on the users' home networks. Bandwidth has been a huge deal. So we run a call center, which is a huge part of our sales operation. Customers were complaining of like echoing and a delay when you're talking, and that's a big deal. That the customer experience totally gets impacted by that. So bandwidth and general connectivity was a huge issue for us that we had to overcome and educate people to say, turn off Netflix for a little while you're talking to customers.
Yeah. So I turn everything, because everyone's turning everything off. Jenny's about to do the teissTalk. Well, I'm going to finish up on this article, but there's a great quote here from Dr. Victoria Baines, who's a brilliant cybersecurity researcher at the North, and she says, all too often people portray this vulnerability rather than an asset, and technical defense is prioritized over human resilience. It's high time we renew our investments in our human security assets. And it seems to me that every week, no matter what the topic, we get back to that reality. So I want to thank the panel just for the thoughts on the article, and let's use it really to look into this whole issue of how we measure the impact of a security operations center. Because I think when we look at a SOC, we're looking at the human side of it there. But if we did need more resources, if we do need to report its progress, it's a reality. It is what it is. And as Joyce said earlier, no matter how many resources you have, there's usually, you need more. We'll make the resources sort of fit the problems that we've got, and maybe even need more. So what are your sort of top level thoughts? Let's go to Joyce first. What are your top level thoughts on the topic? First of all, of measuring the impact of a SOC, Joyce. I mean, you came from different business backgrounds, so you're used to kind of having to report those different measures back in. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yes, and I do think it's important for us to measure the value of any capability, actually. So we've done that. We do that across all the capabilities we have, and across any new programs we deliver. We always do a look back after the program's completed in order to measure the real business value. And an estimate is done at the beginning, and a look back is done, after the completion. And I think the same needs to go for SOC as well. So when we implement SOC, and I say this in generic terms because I've not been part of the initial stages of the SOC implementation within Shell, but I've come in somewhere midway when it's at a certain level of maturity. And I still feel there is a need for us to report the value that SOC brings into the organization. And I'm sure any organization will feel that they need to report that value. And how you report and what metrics you use to report, I believe, depends on the maturity of the SOC itself, because you're maturing and building different capabilities. The capabilities evolve over a period of time. So initially, at your initial stages, maybe your what you report out as value is probably different. When you reach a different stage of maturity, you've made significantly more investments, then the value that you'd be expected from the SOC also will be different, actually. And hence we need to constantly look at what metrics are we using and how we're changing it also based on the maturity of our SOC.
Yeah, I mean, would you agree with that, Sam? Surely.
Yeah, I think the maturity thing's huge because you mentioned TLAs earlier, FLAs. We love an FLA in the SOC. Mean time to whatever, right? Mean time to detect, mean time to respond, mean time to answer. That seems to have snuck in as well. And we love counting. We love to show how much we've got of something. That's quite common. Like, we've detected these many threats. Right. What does that mean? What haven't you detected? That's it.
We're kind of on a losing streak though, Sam, aren't we? Because you can't prove a negative.
You can't.
And you can't base any estimate on uncertainty. You can base it on risk.
You can. I mean, it's, you see people saying, oh, we'll take a number from pick your report of choice. A breach will cost us this much. Yeah. How many have we avoided? We don't know. How many have we avoided? So you've got to start looking at different things, I think. Some of the mean time to do stuff is good from an operational point of view. I used to run a team, and we care about the response times. Quality is a really important side to it as well. But when you're going outside of security, if you just turn up and say, hey, these many phishing emails this week, someone's like, well, right, so what does that mean? Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. It's just got a lot of them. Should you have more? I don't know. Who knows?
Do you know, I just need to say on the phishing, I was talking to a client this weekend. It was somebody who was not in security, and I'm going to come to Manesh, because Manesh's got lots of thoughts on SOCs, I know, but I just need to tell you. And so, you know, it's just to pick up on Sam's point of, like, we had this many phishing emails, is that good or bad? We were talking with a client this week, and one of the people who was not in security said, will you be able to get enough examples of phishing emails to do this piece of work that we need you to do? And I said, well, given that Google will report 18 million a day in April 2020, we should be rocking. But you know, but it just shows that people don't know what they don't know. If they're not in security, how do they even know if it's a thing? I mean, coming to Manesh now, I mean, thoughts on this? ROI from a SOC, Manesh?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you touched on it. We're not a profit center. We're loss prevention, right? And I just want to pick up on Scott Wilson's point. Actually, I completely agree. It's our job to learn the board's language, not the board's job to learn our language. And when I say our, I mean tech speak. You know what Sam was saying, MTTR, and so on. So, yeah, and to be honest, I have seen a lot of scrutiny towards what ROI are we achieving from your budget. So I'm being asked questions like, well, what value are you providing? How are you supporting business objectives? Are you helping us to sell more? And obviously some of this is really hard to answer. Now, I personally don't use, you know, annualized loss expectancy and return on security investment. I'll just put it out there. I don't use any of that. But I do get that we need to be better at articulating our value proposition. So, you know, the kind of things that I do talk about is like you mentioned, the risk reduction. We started looking at the costs of incidents retrospectively, whether it's downtime and availability or the people time to contain an incident, and say, well, actually, this is what this cost us. Let's look to try and invest in our people or process or tech that might help us, and generally talk about the positive impact we have on allowing our business to sell, basically on keeping the website up, or making sure it doesn't get affected by a breach.
But also, I think as well, there's something in it about the way a SOC can improve other technologies that are existing and make them more efficient. I mean, is that something that you've ever added into your reporting, Joyce? Something about, well, it benefits what's already in place, maybe stops us needing the next shiny new thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. One example that I would use is oh, sorry, was that Joyce?
No, it's okay. We'll go to no, finish off on it in a minute. Honestly, Joyce is nodding, she agrees. Go on. Please carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess one thing, we're regulated by the FCA, and we've got certain requirements on us to have operational resilience. And by doing some of the activities that the SOC does, which is tabletops, DR simulation, that actually helps towards the business objective of being operationally resilient as per the FCA guidelines. So that's where we can start to say, hey, do you know that thing the FCA wants? We've already done it. So yeah, we're good.
Yeah, it sees it from both angles. And if I just come to Joyce now, because I mean, I was putting that to you as well, Joyce. Manesh is right, I think.
Yes, indeed, actually. And, you know, I totally agree with all the points been made on we need to speak the business language, actually. Well, I think there is enough awareness, at least I can speak for in my organization, around the importance of information security, cybersecurity, the capabilities we need to build in, and I'm sure it's true for many organizations today. So there is a good understanding of why it is important, and it's our responsibility to tell them, you know, how are we making it important and also secure by whatever we are doing. So translating what we are doing in a language that they understand, and they believe it is important, but they are also able to understand what we are doing in order to address that very important issue. I think that's very important. Coming to tools, right? I do believe, you know, when you're in the initial stages of setting up a SOC capability, or at early stages of maturity, you are testing various things, you're trying out different tools. Sometimes you get everything on a single tool, sometimes you need multiple tools, and then and especially when you have the money, then you end up buying a lot of stuff as well. But at various points in time, I think we should also take a look at, sometimes there is, product A that did not have a feature functionality before, a feature before. They would have added it over a period of time. You would have bought product B to do that. So maybe at some point in time, you could bring them both together and use one product instead of using two. So I think you need to continuously do that kind of, evaluation of tools in the market, your own tools, how have they evolved over a period of time, how much ROI are you getting on your tools, can you optimize your tooling portfolio? Those are the kind of discussions we do have often in our, internally within our organization, and we take those decisions whether we continue with a particular tool, or we consolidate, or we have to go and look for something new because there is an emerging threat, a new area altogether that we haven't invested in, or it's just emerging. We need a new capability for it. That's when we exactly go into the market and scan for something else.
I mean, I think this is so true. I'm just want to, and our audience as ever are commenting wonderfully on some of the things that we're talking about, not least our 3-letter acronyms. But Paul's saying, I think this ties in perfectly with what you both have just been saying is, are you helping us to sell more? And this is where security needs to go and how it needs to frame itself. We are a competitive advantage used well, and Sam absolutely agrees with Paul there. And I mean, I think this is the thing. And what I've also noticed, and sort of getting onto the second part of this kind of title of today, it's starting to feel to me like the C-suite, with all these big ransomware attacks and the debate that's moved away just from the tech and security community, hasn't it? It's moved into the mainstream now. I mean, once they start hacking, and putting ransoms and sort of extortionware on the health service in Ireland and on some of the big corporations in America, it becomes more than just a technical conversation. And it feels like the C-suite are suddenly very interested because they know that they may be responsible in all sorts of ways for when this kind of goes wrong. And I think mostly they want to help. So, I mean, Manesh and Joyce have spoken on it, but Sam, we have to be able to articulate now as clearly as anyone else in that room costs and benefits of that SOC, don't we? I mean, you just cannot get away with saying, "Oh, I'm technical, I can't communicate anymore."
100%. I think, risk is important, but also, I mean, there's the thing about if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to dial yourself back a bit and kind of, think, well, how should I explain it to my mum? Mm-hmm. But, you need to bring someone on a journey, especially if you're asking for investment. That's the thing. You can't just, show graph goes up and then say, can I have some money, please? It doesn't work that way. And it is, if there's a benefit to any of the horrors that are going on around us right now, it is that the board's paying more attention. We're seeing this happen a lot now. And they're thinking about not just the spend, but the people side of it as well. I know we haven't talked much about the kind of retention side of things, but I think I was just
going to come to it, Sam. Honestly, you're a genius. I was just about to say, but if we're talking about that, you've got to start talking about turnover within a SOC, because it's typically massive. Even within the security community, it's huge, isn't it?
It is, and adding the burnout, right? There's your problem. So I think you've got to invest not just in your people. This to me is where automation absolutely flies. Because if you can have your people doing the more interesting work, they're not having to do this horrible, grunt churning tickets back and forth. They're able to use their brains. But my favorite phrase is human brains for human problems, right? Yeah. Get people on the right stuff. You invest in them. You get time for them to do training. You let them get some home life. I know, do we live at home or work from home? Live at work, sorry, work from home. There's that.
Yeah, but you see, that's in the article, Sam, the work-life balance. Outside of work, the high funds have learned, left many SOC managers unable to switch off, relax, and became irritable with friends and family. I mean, Manesh, do you see this? Do you see this in your own SOC team and kind of notice it, try and sort of notice it? You were talking about the culture at Simply Business, trying to make sure that that's positive for people in that very high stress, because the cost of a mistake is so high in the SOC, right? So do you, from a people point of view, do you agree with this? What do you try and do to kind of catch it before it becomes a problem?
Yeah, certainly. I can talk about some of the things that we've done within Simply Business. So certainly, Sam, what you're talking about, the engagement is mega important in keeping the team well engaged and happy in their job, because they need to remain committed to the company's mission and committed to the job that they're doing. Certainly, I had many a conversation, and I myself, I'll openly say this, I struggled as well in the early days, certainly of the pandemic, and actually later as well. And some of the things that we tried and that helped us, certainly helped me, was just to take a couple of days to take a breather, so I didn't completely get overloaded. Like I said, it just became double, triple, if not even more busier for us. And sometimes it's just overwhelming. It's like a denial of service on yourself, basically. And the team took a few days as well here and there, just to de-stress, focus on themselves, look after number one, basically. And instead of having a lot of extended period of time off, they came back a lot more refreshed, and that regular check-ins really helped. So yeah, we are certainly seeing that, but giving people time back to look after themselves was massively important, and it still continues to be important.
So I think that's very true, and it was one of the questions I was going to ask Joyce in our interview at the beginning. So maybe I can ask it now and just give you a very full answer if you can. But I was, you didn't come straight through. You've not always been in security. You've been in lots of other departments. So this burnout, what advice would you give people for sort of managing teams in stressful situations, Joyce? Because I know that you've worked in lots of different companies. Fellow XG fellow XG. So, I mean, what sort of advice would you give, coming from all those different backgrounds with all that experience, on managing teams under those high stress situations?
Well, I would say it's important that when it comes to managing people, you can never have one solution that works for everybody, because they're not systems that you can apply a procedure and it works always and gives the same output. So people always have, and other factors that determine how they respond to situations. Actually, some are more internal, some external. So there are no two individuals that can always respond exactly the same way in every situation, actually. And I think it's important for us as leaders to understand, how do you personalize your conversations to understand, what people are going through, and address it in a way that it helps them. Giving standard, there are sometimes when you manage large teams, you have to do certain things like, we do check-ins, we do some fun activities, even if it's virtual, we do virtual coffees, we've done, virtual hangouts and stuff like that. That's for the larger team. They do come together, they try to create the same, environment and, the same vibe and stuff like that. But we've also seen that, some people do not respond too well even to those. Actually, you have to learn to identify those signs, because especially in virtually, that is one of the biggest challenges. I cannot see you just all the time. Sometimes you're not turning on, I'm talking in the context of people. They're not always turning on the camera. Sometimes, their voice does not reflect their state of mind, actually. So how do you really, pay attention to those signs in this kind of a virtual working environment, and, take something back, actually, that you need to do something about a situation. I think it's very important that we personalize that, and that is what emotional intelligence is about. It's about being able to understand that different people can go through different emotions. Some people are comfortable sharing about it, some people are not. How do you address both situations? And some people want help, some people do not want help. You don't want to offer help to somebody who's not willing to take help, or is okay dealing with it themselves. But how do you understand those emotions, those boundaries, where exactly you can step in and help? I think it's very important that you personalize it, and there can never be a one size fits all solution. But there are some things you could do more generically, actually, and I think everybody is doing that. I've heard that from so many people. Actually, they're trying their best to keep people engaged, motivated, and I highly appreciate all of that, all of those initiatives that people are taking, actually.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant advice. And it's exactly the advice that we give in awareness training and even in social engineering. Tailor it. as best you can, because what works for one person does not work for the next person. And just knowing the size of your responsibilities and some of the teams you look after, I think we can all take a big lesson from that, Joyce. So thank you. It's a pity we got interrupted at the start, but I'm glad that you could come up and say that, because I think that never a truer word's been said. So look, we're coming to the end of our time, folks, and there was questions about the advantages of cloud-based SOCs and practical advice. Maybe we'll pick up on this again in another episode of TEISS. But like for now, I think we just need to wrap up on some sort of final thoughts on this whole thing, because I think it's so important that we understand about that remote work and about the burnout and the people element. So maybe if I can come to Manesh first, what are your final thoughts on this whole topic, Manesh? Sort of the whole thing about the, teams being sort of burnt out a little bit and measuring the SOC. What was your final thoughts for our audience be today?
Yeah, with regards to the burnout, I would say I certainly felt that myself. So being open yourself, be vulnerable yourself. Like Joyce said, sometimes people don't want to share. So you almost need to be vulnerable yourself and share how you're feeling to encourage others as well. So certainly, that really helped. And the measuring ROI, I think I kind of touched on it earlier, is we need to learn how to speak the board's language. There was also a comment in the in the chat about we do need to sell more. We need to talk about how we support the business in that respect, and that's our competitive advantage. So I completely agree with that. So I would say those sort of areas. Yeah.
And Sam, what about your thoughts, just final thoughts on the subject? And I do have some of our audience asking a couple of other questions. Manny's asking, can we address this one about smarter builds and technologies and that type of thing? And I don't think we're going to have time quite for that today, Manny, but we'll maybe note it and see if we can get it in for another panel in a future edition. We just got interrupted just a little bit at the start. So we do appreciate the question, but I think we don't have time for it today. Sam, what about your thoughts generally on the topic?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think first of all, you've got to make sure your tools are supporting your people and not creating work from them. That's really, really important. And ultimately, on a human level, reach out to your staff, check in, ask how they are. It's a tough time for all of us. I love your comment, Manesh, on being vulnerable. I think that's really important. And everyone listening, look after yourselves. That's my other side of it, is thank you for coming along today.
Oh, thanks, Sam. And Joyce, have you got your final comments before I close this down? And we're running out of time. But final, just a few thoughts on the topic generally.
Sure. And firstly, I do need to apologize for the initial. I'm just in a different place, actually, not my regular place.
Absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry, we are patient with it. It's no problem. I've disappeared more than once on teissTalk completely. So anyway, final thoughts on the topic for us, Joyce.
Well, when it comes to measuring ROI on SOC, I think it's something that's inevitable. We have to do it, and there's no two ways about it. I spend considerable amount of my time, in my day job, reporting metrics, different types of metrics for different purposes, for different audiences, actually. So I take it as part of my day job, and also I'm passionate about it because I see it as a way to create awareness of what we're doing, the impact of what we are doing, actually. So I make every attempt to make the metrics very purposeful and objective to the audience that we're reporting to. When it comes to the remote working, we're probably going to be in this situation for a long time, actually, in some countries for sure. And even when we come out of this whole pandemic situation, fully vaccinated, hopefully, but our whole the future of work might change from what it is today. So we don't know what it will look like in future. We have possibilities of what it might look like. So we need to be prepared for that, and we need to be prepared for a transition from, as is today, work from home, the current challenges we're dealing with, how we're addressing that, and how the transition will happen to a state after the pandemic. So I do fully appreciate everything that every one of us has been through. We've all had to deal with different things, I'm sure. And I just, send out, as much cheer, happiness, and good wishes to everybody, actually, that you all come out of this quite well and, to do something better as better individuals, better human beings.
Well, you know what, Joyce, we massively appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you for joining us from India, and wish all of you over there the very best of luck with everything. We hope things improve for all of us and yourselves particularly as soon as they possibly can. I want to say thank you to our entire panel, to Joyce Rodriguez, to Manesh Dattani, and to Sam Humphreys from Exabeam, who have sponsored us today. So thanks to Exabeam. I want to say thank you to you guys, our awesome audience who have participated so well today. I did have, I thought Scott's comments were great. I thought Paul's comments were great. But what I'm going to do is award our teissTalk mug to Manny, because he asked a question that we just, because they asked a question, we didn't have time to get to. It was a great question. Don't want you to worry about that. So let's get the mug to you, and we'll get to that question, either me or Jeff, who will be on Thursday at 10 o'clock on the next edition of teissTalk. So we'll get to that question soon. Thanks for your questions, Manny. And please do come back and we'll get to them next time. But for now, I want to say thanks to everyone, including the Teisel, for coping with it so well today. Thanks again to Exabeam for sponsoring, and thanks to all of you for tuning into teissTalk. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.